Hello, hello. I cannot believe it's the last week in March 2023, and that means it's the last week of the Elevate Coaching Conversation series hosted by yours truly, Rosella Ide-White, your Love Big coach. This month for Women's History Month, I have been interviewing and connecting with some incredible women coaches who are literally changing the game. These are coaches who are embodying not only their gifts, but their work in ways that pushes against some of the things that we think about when we think about traditional coaching in the industry. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend and sister colleague, Kaleah Nicole, who will be with us today. So hey, Kaleah.
Hi, Rosella. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad that you could be a part of this conversation series. So I've been asking everybody to introduce themselves. You shared something with me that I feel like is perfect because you are at your core a reinvention strategist. So talk to us a little bit about who you are and what you do as a coach.
Yes. So, who am I? I feel like that answer can change depending on the day. But I definitely am a reinvention strategist. I'm a coach. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a healer. I'm a generational cycle breaker. Um, and
Oh, now generational cycle breaker.
yes,
Yes.
I am. I do claim that for myself. And I'm a secret keeper. I'm a lot of things, but mostly I am a spiritual being living in this human experience and really trying to use my lived experience along with my gifts just to be used for the highest good to raise the consciousness of humanity. That's
Oh my
ultimately
gosh.
who I am.
Y'all
Uh,
hear that? Raising the consciousness of humanity. And I have been in Kaleah's presence virtually and in person, and there is just a light that radiates and emanates from you that I feel like is in absolute alignment with who you say you are. So just thank you for the work that you've done to bridge together these parts of yourself. So talk to me a little bit about what does it mean for you? Because you use the word spiritual as you think about being a business coach, a mindset and success coach. So what does that mean? What does a spiritual coach mean?
So, well, for one, spiritual for me is like the study of the soul. So I am a ICF certified credentialed coach. You and I graduated from the same coach training program, but I'm also a trauma informed spiritual practitioner. So I definitely believe that spiritual and business mastery go hand in hand. And I feel like we
Mhm.
can only grow in our business the way that we are growing spiritually. So I do connect the past, present, and future in my practice, and it's kind of a entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey for me and for my
Oh,
clients. So I kind of marry the two.
oh man. And I totally resonate with that, right? As I think about my own journey, both from faith-based work into entrepreneurship. And for me, I always think about, right, in the Christian scriptures, there's this text that talks about it's not flesh and blood that we're dealing with, but powers and principalities. And I think about that a lot when I think about business ownership, leadership, and even coaching when it comes to mindset stuff, because it's not always the physical, it's the
Right.
stuff that goes beneath that. So how does that show up for you in your work with clients when you're dealing with mindset and obstacle blocks? How does that spiritual focus actually show up in practice?
Yeah, it's a lot of uncovering the layers because I work with a lot of high energy, high ambitious, ambitious women, purpose-driven women. And so we're often operating with like this perfectionism, and we have these goals, these huge visionary goals that we want for ourselves. But it's like with every layer of success, with every nuance of entrepreneurship, you're met with like these limiting beliefs or these setbacks or these um you're kind of like met with this former version of yourself and you're trying to overcome that. So a lot of this spiritual work and a lot of these trauma informed practices, it's like anytime we're trying to get to that next level, what is it that how do we need to shift our identity to get to that next level? And it is taking a look at sometimes those habits, those actions, those behaviors that did serve us before, they might not need to go with us to the next level that we're going to.
Listen, what's the quote they say? got you to where you are is not going to necessarily get you to where you want to be or who you want to be. And I
Exactly.
feel like that's so true. And that's helped me also have compassion on previous iterations of myself, because it's like those things got me to where I am. And it could be time to let go to receive the next thing. So, what are some of the things that you notice with clients in terms of themes when you think about moving people through the uncovering? What are, say, like the top three things that you notice with clients that they're struggling with that are spiritual or energetic blocks as they're becoming the entrepreneur that they want to be or the person that they want to be?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is the fixer, like putting people, places, things before their own needs, still operating in that. So that
Mhm.
that one gets you. Yeah,
Yes.
yes, yes. Very much still being that person and not stepping into, just showing up for themselves fully, pouring into
Yeah.
their own cup before they can pour into someone else's. So that's a reoccurring theme. And then also the imposter syndrome. Anytime that we are shifting, we are reinventing ourselves, we are deciding that we want something different for ourselves, it can be an uncomfortable space.
Yeah.
And we might put labels on ourselves that keep us stuck unconsciously. So just knowing that the imposter syndrome, or whatever we label it, it's a part of the growth. It's a
Yeah.
part of the process. And it's okay to lean into that fear. It's okay to lean into that uncomfortable space if it means that you're growing in the way that you want to. So that's another one. And then a third one I would say is like just your own stepping into your own feminine power, step
Mm,
coming back home to yourself. We've been a lot of the clients that I attract have been operating in their masculine for far too long.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's just it's integrating the two in a beautiful way, but to where your feminine essence is leading. You know?
Yeah. And I want to get into that because I am one of those women who operated very much out of her masculine energy. And I feel like there's still a lot of misunderstanding about what the masculine and feminine is, especially in this time when we're moving beyond gender binaries. And the reality is, all of us have these energetic poles within us. And the invitation, right, is for those poles to be balanced or to come back and be able to move between the two. Not that we like vote one part off the island, but for so many of us, the feminine for me had like disappeared. I was all in my masculine energy. So could you tell us a little bit about masculine and feminine energies, but also, yeah, what that means and how, because this is what attracted me to you as well. It's like there's something there that I want to embody, and it's that
Mhm.
divine femininity. So talk to us a little bit about that.
We definitely both have both. We're
Mhm.
all equal parts of everything. But I do feel like based off of our lineage, our ancestors, our history, we have had to be in survival mode. And
Yeah.
that looked like us, really operating in our masculine a lot of the times. And this is now an opportunity for us to finally get back to who we once were. And so I love the integration of both. I love that we can turn it off and on. We can choose, we can acquiesce. I'm not saying that we have to walk around pretending to be one or the other, but the
Mhm.
idea is it's okay to surrender to that and know that you don't always have to be in control.
Yeah.
You don't always have to be right. You don't always have to have the plan. It's okay to allow yourself to step into your feminine essence and allow that to lead. And sometimes that's just completely intuition and in flow and in grace. And it's
Yep.
not overthinking, it's not pre-planning, it's not knowing the outcome, it's not trying to figure out the how. It's really just leaning inward.
That's it, right? That at the end you gave us some like actual characteristics of operating in the feminine, right? The words like flow and grace, and one of my friends talks about the receiving that we do as the feminine when our feminine is operating versus the constant outpouring and giving. And
Yes.
it's hard for a lot of us, especially for us women. I feel like even more so for Black women because of all of the things that are a part of our history. And this kind of leads us into, you talk about yourself being a generational cycle breaker, which I love that because it's not, we're letting go of the curse language
Yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
I don't think it's about cursing, right? Like, but there are cycles and patterns that do come out of trauma, that do come out of these ancestral lineages, where our people were surviving and just doing the best that they could with what they had or they didn't have. So when you think about being a generational cycle breaker, what does that look like and mean for you in your own experience?
Honestly, it's really about me doing all of the trauma work and the healing work that I can do so that I can show up 100% authentically in my power. And within that, it creates a ripple effect automatically.
Mm.
It's not about trying to coach my family or trying to get everybody together to have a therapy set. It's not about, I mean, if you can do that, I'm not saying that that's not a great thing, but really it's about me deciding that it stops at me and I'm going to show up like I'm going to show up as such. And when I do, it just becomes like a ripple effect. I was having a conversation with my mom the other day, and she's like, every time I talk to you, I'm just more and more enlightened just around the things that you have going on.
Yes, yes, yes. My dad says that to me all the time. He's like, he says it like this, you make my head hurt. You got me thinking about all this stuff. And it's not even that I'm like trying to share or impart, I don't consider myself in that vein, but I feel like the more that I've come home to myself, the
Yes.
more that I've embraced this reality that it stops with me, whatever the it is, right? So for me, it's things like secrecy or hiding in shame with some realities about my existence, or stepping out and being an entrepreneur, doing something that's very different from my family of origin, or being someone who is committed, right, to the ways that I think about things in a positive way versus always thinking about things negatively. And so when I'm talking to my dad, he's like, you make my head hurt. You and your friends, y'all talking about this stuff and you're doing things differently. And then I start to see it, right? Like,
Yes.
my dad is not someone back in the day that would have done what I'm about to share. One of his favorite shows right now is the new Queer Eye. He loves Jonathan Van Ness, and we watched Queer Eye together. And then he started going down the rabbit hole and found Jonathan's Getting Curious with JVN series. And we watched that together. And anyone who knows my dad knows that that would not have been part of his story
Wow.
10, 20, 30 years ago. But it's like the more that we become fully who we are, it literally is like that quote, the Marianne Williamson quote, we give other people permission to let them their light shine, right? To come home to themselves. So yeah, I think it's so important and it's so powerful. And I'm curious, how do you see that connect? So one of your modalities, so y'all, Kaleah has a bunch of modalities that she works with. One of them is around trauma-informed coaching, which really speaks to me both as someone who has experienced trauma, but also as a disaster chaplain and, accompanying people through the traumatic experiences of life. So what is trauma-informed coaching? And can you tell us a little bit about big T and little T trauma?
Oh, yes, that's a good question. Trauma-informed coaching is basically, it's very similar to the practice of life coaching, which is still forward progression and, movement, action steps. It's goal-oriented, it's action-oriented. However, we are able to recognize when something is blocking you that is perhaps a traumatic incident and really getting to the root cause of it, acknowledging that it's causing resistance, not skipping over it, but actually identifying it, discussing it, getting to the root cause, and basically declaring something new for yourself. Anytime, because and then little T and big T. So I say a traumatic experience is any situation that you were in where a negative imprint or something negative imprinted on your subconscious mind. It could be anything. It could have been as simple as you got pushed on the playground and that made you feel like you were alone in that moment. And you might have imprinted, I'm always going to be alone. Yeah. And from then on, you start picking up evidence of how you are always isolated or alone. Or it could be as big as a war survivor or getting hit by a car or being in domestic
Mhm.
violence. Those are like the bigger ones that we obviously know are traumatic,
Right.
but sometimes it's those little tiny compounded ones that really infest in our subconscious. And I can have the same imprint from a little T that I can't have with a big T. It's
That's yes.
how the person perceives it. It's
Yeah.
literally how I perceive it. I can decide that I'm unworthy and unlovable because my mom made me go to my room and she did it in a harsh manner. And I can also decide I'm unlovable and unworthy because I was raped, for an example, you
Mhm.
know, and it
Mhm.
and two different things, but that same exact imprint can play out in similar spaces of how you decide to how you develop and how it shows up in your life. So that can be the difference between the two. And it's really just getting to the root of what you decided during that traumatic incident and declaring something new. We have so much power in the mind to make
That's not
decisions and shift just like that. It's
that's
really
it.
like, when did I decide it? And what do I want to decide now?
Yeah. And I love how I mean, all of the women that I've been interviewing this month, I mean, we're coaches, we're, I think, excellent at what we do, but we talk about the reclamation of one's agency, right? Like we have the power to
Yeah.
choose something different, to choose a new belief, to choose a new story, to choose new relationships, to choose a new way of engaging with ourselves. And I love how you were sharing about, well, I'm going to say, I love how you were sharing about trauma, but I love the distinction and
Mhm.
going further into that, because the reality is if you're human and you're living and you are at all connected to other people, you have experienced trauma. There has been something in your life that has caused you to question who you are, to wonder about your worth, your lovability. I think we've done different amounts of work, and we have different relationships with it. But this notion, and I see this a lot with Black women too, people can talk about all these things they've been through and be like, but I'm fine. That wasn't traumatic. And
Mhm.
it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like your dad wasn't there, or
Yeah.
you were raised in a situation with like harsh people around you, or you were the only one in your school racially or whatever. Like all of that is traumatic,
Yes.
right? And
Being
so, yeah,
born into this human experience is being born into a traumatic circumstance.
yes,
The
yes,
birth canal is traumatic.
yes. Like, I mean, they talk about birth as the great transition, right? You have it at the time of birth and the time of death, right?
Yeah.
There is an inbreaking. And I think about the, what is it, Anais Nin quote, the day came when it was harder to remain closed tight in a bud than to break open. And even as we think about what plants do, flowers do, like there's a breaking open. So
Yep.
what was is no longer there. And that's traumatic. And it doesn't, I mean, it's not that it has to stay there, but I think when we start to embrace that, then we can start to get to the root of, okay, why do I think this? Where does this thought come from? I'm wondering, and this came up in a conversation in an entrepreneurs group I was in, or I'm in this morning, and I'm curious because it stuck with me. There's all of this talk about toxic positivity that I think is real, right? Like when people are trying to negate negative experiences, or just like you'll think your way out of it, or and both of us have experienced trauma, have come out of situations and experiences. So I always want to have the conversation about what's the difference when we talk about choosing something different and embracing a new story, in your opinion, from toxic positivity of just like, I'll just think these good thoughts and
Yeah.
it's fine. How do you articulate the difference between those?
It's like I always say you can't manifest your way through your trauma work. Like you have
Mhm.
to, it has to be intentional. Toxic positivity, or is that the term, toxic positivity?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
real thing. And it's unfortunate because you can't bypass, or you can, but for so long before it catches
right,
you. So this
right.
isn't, there's no spiritual bypassing. There's no like, oh, I'm just gonna, manifest and have this quantum leap past this thing. Whatever you're suppressing, whatever you haven't dealt with, it will come back at some point to rear its ugly head and let you know it's there. So
Yeah.
I think that, the idea is, although I love, I also study positive psychology, and
Hmm.
I do believe in, manifesting with good intentions. But the idea is you have to be willing to do your trauma work if you want to show up authentically as the best version of yourself. And healing is not linear. We're going to be doing some form of healing until the day we die if you are on a path of enlightenment and if you want to continue to grow and develop as a human. So just know
Yeah.
that it's not going anywhere. It's gonna, even when you think you've overcome, it's like, I dealt with that trauma, I've dealt with that trigger. No, you haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
You've addressed it, you've have self-awareness around it, you've maybe
yeah.
identified some new beliefs that you want to replace, but please believe old versions of yourself will come back to test you. And so it's always just armoring yourself with those tools, and know that you cannot bypass anything that you had not dealt with.
That's so good. I was talking to Charisma on Friday, and one of the things that I talked about or I brought up was like part of the beauty of coaching or working with someone who's a coach is that you're outlining kind of where you want to go, who you want to become, what you want to do or experience in your life. And then the coach's job is to continually hold that up to you, right? To say, oh, this is what you said. This is what you want to do. This is who you want to become. And the recognition is you just made the decision recently, right? Over the last however amount of short time, but you've been living this way for your entire life. So those versions of yourself are going to continue to show up. The invitation, though, is always to awareness and making those small choices in the moment, right? So when I think about when we're dealing with this stuff, whether it's things of trauma, of grief, those things that continue to come up, part of it is having compassion with yourself because it's not going to change overnight. But the other part is like, okay, what is this new behavior? What is this new thought? What is this new belief that I'm going to try on when this other part of myself comes up?
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that I love that you talk about and you call yourself as a reinvention strategist. And y'all, Kaleah has, I feel like, lived so many lives. She is a United States Army veteran. You are a certified makeup professional, a makeup artist. You are a creative writ large. You worked in HR, I mean, corporate HR. You do individual and corporate coaching. I'm curious about those experiences and your own story of reinvention and
Yeah.
how you got to this place. Like, how do those things piece together to be the Kaleah Nicole that we see today?
Yes, I love that question. I feel like I actually have always been doing some aspect of coaching my entire life. It might have just been curious question asking. It might have been being inquisitive. For those who I talked to that hadn't done their trauma work, they might have said I was nosy or being intrusive. But I think that that part of me has always been there. But I would say how I ended up finding coaching for myself was just my own rediscovery. I had checked off all of these external boxes for basically societal validation.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the military, I rose in those ranks, I got my degrees, I went into corporate as a civilian, rose in the ranks of HR, had my executive, table with my little corner office. And I was so unfulfilled and depleted and just like, on the outside, everybody's like, girl, you are living the life. And I'm like, miserable inside. So that was my
Yeah.
first kind of wake up call that, even though I had gotten all these accolades and gotten things done, what had I really gotten done just for me that, wasn't kind of a seed planted by someone else maybe. And that's when I hired my own coach. And then I was like, oh, this is a thing, because I feel like I've been doing this anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always helped other people with their own personal development and self-development and career development. So the idea that I could actually be witnessed, like that, and not be the one that was the witnesser, that was interesting. And I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that dynamic. And that's when I first, like, I really want to get into coaching. I went through my first coach training certification, but throughout that, I had a huge spiritual awakening. I hired therapists. Um, I started going through a conscious uncoupling with my partner. So I was
Mm-hmm.
married at the time. I'm now divorced. And then through that process, a business was birthed as well. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the coaching practice that I have today, but it didn't happen like overnight. It really happened from life experience and me trying to figure my own shit, can I say stuff out.
Yes, you can say shit. Yes, we're trying to figure out this shit.
It was my own identity shifts. Yes. Me,
Yeah.
like my own reinvention of self and just deciding to do that. That's how I became a makeup artist. Like I'm doing everything I love. I love makeup. Fine, girl, get certified in it. I love skating. Okay, take up a skating class. I love painting. Okay, start painting. Like just really a rediscovery of self. And
Yeah.
this business was kind of birthed through that.
And I love that, Kaleah, like that invitation to all of us, right? There are things that we do love or we do enjoy. And maybe there have been voices, maybe our own, maybe other voices, maybe societal voices that have said, that's not worth your time. It's silly for you to do that. But then it's like, if you love it, do it.
Mhm.
Right? Like no matter how small, I love coloring. Like I love color. So at some point I got coloring books, right? I used to do puzzles all the time and I'm going back to that. Like I love having a glass of wine, putting on some music and just getting lost in a puzzle, like piecing something together. And then it's the other things, right? You loved being a makeup artist. I'm gonna get certified doing this thing.
Mhm.
But it's part of it is spending the time getting to know yourself. And I think that starts when we become, and I'm using this phrase more, when we become more self-centered
Yeah.
versus other-centered, right? So when we're other-centered, it's all of the stuff external to us that we're using as our foundation. But when we're self-centered, we're getting back to our intuition, the divine within, this being in body, so that we can actually like get reacquainted and
Yeah.
know what it is we love, what we enjoy. And then when you follow your joy, like other stuff starts to reveal, right?
Yeah.
Like
When you're
it
in
never ceases to
flow.
amaze me. You're in
Yeah.
flow,
Yes.
bringing it all full circle.
Yep.
So, Kaleah, this has been awesome. I want you to tell people, how can folks connect with you if they're interested in working with you? Where do they find you? All those great things.
Yes. Well, please find me on Instagram at Kaleah underscore Nicole. Also on Facebook at Kaleah Nicole. And I currently am opening my one-on-one roster. So if you're interested in that, please tap on my link, book a clarity call. It's complimentary. And let's see if we are a good fit to work together. I also have a group program that I host um, twice a year. So we currently have a wait list for that now. So if that's something you're interested in, just please DM me.
Yes. Yeah. And tell us, what is your group program called and who are your ideal
Yes.
clients?
Yes. So it's called Awaken Self, and it's basically a combination of business and soul coaching. So we're reconnecting with our intuition, we're embodying our authentic self, we're doing all of those sacred practices for feminine embodiment, but we're also getting clear on our mission, our message, our values. We're developing a soul aligned product suite. We're starting to close our first few offers. So we're kind of doing the spiritual and the business work simultaneously in a beautiful group program with other like-minded entrepreneurs that are on a similar journey.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll be sharing all of your links. If you have not caught this series, please go over to YouTube and it's at Love Big Coach to see these phenomenal women in these interviews over this Women's History Month. Kaleah, thank you so much for
You.
joining us. We have 2 more conversations this month. We're finishing out on Wednesday and Friday of this week. And this is Elevate Coaching, a conversation series that is focused on helping you consider new possibilities and create new realities through the power of coaching. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.